Hey, good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a productive day. Just kind of want to jump on here real quick and kind of take a different turn in talking about certain aspects of sentencing when it comes to Derek Chauvin and his murder and the murder of George Floyd. All right, we all know he was convicted and of 3 counts of the different types of manslaughter and murder in the sense of what happened to George Floyd. Everything was analyzed in the sense of the case. So when you think about sentencing, we look at different aspects. We thinking, as a public, we want to see him get the maximum. We want to see him get, just due for his murder, his involvement in the murder of George Floyd. And I just kind of dug some stuff up on sentencing and the guidelines. And, there's a commission involved and it has states and stuff they have played with the numbers. And interesting enough, one of them is Minnesota. So we all know what's going on in Minneapolis right now, not only with George Floyd, but with Daunte Wright, and other states are Chicago and now, North Carolina, Elizabeth City, where a shooting took place there. So we got to understand that as exposure of law enforcement, deadly use of force is being exposed, we're going to have to take it up a notch in the sense of continue to expose, but not only that, but also understanding how the process works. I did a video a while back on the court system, how the courts work, district court, circuit court, state court. You have, different versions of court systems involved, U.S. appeals. We can talk about all types of different versions of court. So when I looked up some information just dealing with certain things, like for the sentencing commission, right? So we have reports that are drawn out from throughout the years of how sentencing guidelines are shaped. Defined here, www.ncsc.org has your data assets and research on sentencing guidelines, which basically breaks down the structure of criminal sentencing staged by specifically defining offenses. So how does criminals get sentenced to jail and prison? They have a commission that talks about the fairness in sentencing. They have a commission board that has a panel where they look at, the center of state courts and how you render sentencing. So we know Derek Chauvin, we got to wait until, less than 8 weeks now for the judge to sentence him and to what he's going to get. So we think about, different states. I was telling somebody the other day where there's different states, they render different sentencing, when it comes to certain types of crimes. So they're going to look at the offender, the offense, the elements in the case. They're going to look at if he's a first offender, was he a repeat offender? They're going to look at these things, right? So certain dynamics, lawmakers, policymakers, prosecutors, criminal defense attorneys, state attorneys, district attorneys, all these individuals play a role into some type of involvement with the process of dealing with sentencing or, state courts or how it's ran. So when we have these commissions, they vote and they decide and they write policy on how and what they look at in the sense of the type of crime, the element of the crime and the outcome of the case and everything in between to determine, how the Pacific people get the sentencing of the type of crime they're in. So with Derek Chauvin, this is a big situation where what is the judge going to give him, in offense of the elements of crime. And then, you got second degree manslaughter, you got murder, you got all types of different versions of things. We got to look back and see what is he going to get? So a lot of people don't understand the process of how, people get sentenced works, so in the nc.sc.org, you can look it up yourself. I'll put it in the comments below, but you can look at it and you can see the different fundamental issues that some states are determining whether or not the sentencing guidelines are taking place. Are they effective? Are they still operational? Do they need to be revised? Are they rendering the right amount of sentencing per the crime? This commission is going to evaluate and look at all the types of different offenses and elements depending on the case that is in. And they're going to look at these things. They're going to do research and see, what can be tweaked, what can be fixed. So when we think about someone committing a crime, you have guidelines, in place, and as you look through the documentation, there's questions that these sentencing guidelines continuums has. This is a panel, and they're going to ask these questions. They're going to look at scoring sheets and all these different type of things. They're going to review previous cases. They're going to review if someone gets out early, are they on good behavior? Are they a threat? Are they causing issues in their prison system? Do they need to be relocated? Enforceable rules. How documentation from the prison personnel that work there, the correctional officers there. All these things takes into account to a point system where they evaluate moderate position, unlikely position, putting these points together to determine whether the sentencing was effective or whether it was rendered justified in giving the person the sentence. So we go to, they have Arkansas, they have Minnesota, they have Tennessee, DC, Alabama, Alaska, right? They have these different states, and you can go through each one and look at the commissions and see what it relates to in the offense categories, in and out of prison, sentences length, whether the judges are flexible, whether they're more hard-nosed in a sense, or with the type of sentencing that they render, whether, looking at probation and correctional facilities, rehabilitation facilities, whether they're looking at if that's more effective than just putting someone in prison. All these things taken into account. So when we look at, Minnesota, I'm going to scroll down to Minnesota because I was just looking at it before I started this, and just kind of see what are their guidelines when it comes to, this particular case, in a sense of Derek Chauvin. How would they grade the sentencing? How would they render sentencing to him? Because a lot of people want to know. Yes, we're victorious in the sense of him getting convicted, but then the next question is people want to know is how are he's going to get convicted? Or he's going to get convicted. So some of the things that are interesting for Minnesota. It has its purpose. The guidelines, they're designed for public safety, uniformity, and being proportional in the sense that a judge may not sentence someone so, strictly than others. Like this is a fixed sentence. So Derek Chauvin say he gets 10 years, right? Or he may get 6 or less, but say he gets 10 years, that's a fixed sentence. And what they do for Minnesota, from what I'm reading, is that they're looking at all the criminal history. They're looking at if it's a first time offense, second time offense, repeat offender, and they're comparing other sentences that are in the same category of the crime and seeing if they going to match and give the same type of sentencing to someone else. And they try to keep it uniform. They try to keep it to where all people in this particular category gets the same sentence. So it breaks down the commission, and when they report, when they pass panel, they pass vote, and they look at all types of substantial evidence. They look at the sentence, if it exists, if it's presumptuous, identifiable, compelling, and if they look at the circumstances surrounding that to see if it's going to be feasible to give the sentence. Right. A defendant may appeal at a sentence departure, so they may appeal. They may not like the sentence. They may can appeal it with the lawyer or their representation, and they're looking at the practices and correctional resources. They're looking at in Minnesota as a whole state. They're looking at the resources and see if they can be able to support their sentences that they're giving. They're supporting the personnel. It was a high profile case such as this. Are they going to be able to support Derek Chauvin in the sense of putting them somewhere where he's safe, or are they going to put him in general pop, or they probably won't, most likely not, especially what's going on. Are they going to put him in isolation, solitary, or are they going to put him in his own cell? There's a support system. They're going to look at all these things, right? The guidelines are promulgated by Sentencing Commission, shall be established a presumptuous fixed sentence for defenders, and shall be advisory to a district court. So district court is going to be in some point in this process. So you got to look at your state court, district court, appeals court. You got to look at the levels. You got to look at which state has which. You got to look at where the trial's at. Where the sentencing is going to come from. The same judge that was doing the trial, maybe the judge that's going to give him the sentencing. So this is stuff we got to look at. You got to look at these type of things. And when we look at and study how the criminal justice system operates, I think a lot of people would really understand how people get the sentences that they get. How people get 3 years, how they plea out and get less than that, how they just get probation, how do they get 10 years or 15 years. We can say that most African Americans get a large sentence, but, looking at each state is different. You know, Michigan is going to be different than Minnesota. Minnesota is going to be different from Arkansas. Arkansas is going to be different from Alaska. It just depends on the statistics. This is a numbers game. This is data. You know what I'm saying? So when people sit back and understand, read, and do the studying on this type of stuff, we can have a better understanding on how this relates to sentencing, how this relate to the criminal justice system, how does it relate to, you know, the type of crimes, the what's the word I'm looking for? The ethnicity of the person that commits the crime. You know, we looking at African Americans, right? We looking at black people, right? That commit these crimes. They get larger sentences. They get less than larger sentences versus Caucasian or Asian or different other non-minorities or minorities besides African American. What are what's the data say? You know what I'm saying? So this is how they come up with these reports. And they analyze these reports, and you look at the commission members on here. You got Court of Appeals judge, you got a district court judge, you got a commissioner of corrections, you got a county attorney, public defender, peace officer, probation and parole officers, 3 members of the general public, who of whom is a victim is a felon. You have these commission members, all these they get a variety of people that's on these boards and these panels to look at sentencing and see from all angles on which is righteous. Let's say righteous, but justice in the sense of the sentencing of the crime. So I just kind of want to break this down. It may seems like in terms of it's not applicable to what we usually see, but I think people need to dig into this site and see for their particular state, how does sentencing work? How does the process work to get sentenced to a particular time in jail or whatever sentencing that is rendered? You know, when people understand when a crime is committed and it's so high profile, people think they should get, you know, when something's high profile, meaning that it's publicly viewed or people are watching or people are reviewing it, people think Derek Chauvin should get years, 20 years, 30 years, you know, and I know the emotional side, people are saying that because of what happened to George Floyd and how heinous the crime was. But when you sit back and look at the Sentencing Commission and these type of panels and see what they're going to look at, they're going to give that man, you know, what they think they should get as far as what they see on this types of on this panel, what has been established through the Sentencing Commission, you know, and it's going to be, you know, it might not be what people think it is. And it's based off previous crimes, ethnicity, you know, dealing with the type of crime it is, the elements of the crime, the state guidelines, the court's guidelines, all these things play into role on how this stuff works. So I want people to understand that it's process and procedure in place when it comes to sentencing, just like when it comes to trial, when it comes to arrest, when it comes to the criminal justice system as a whole. There's always a process in place, and people need to understand that. So I kind of want to just touch on this a little bit. I'll put the website in the comments below to people to review, www.ncsc.org. It'll tell you, break down these types of things. People can look up and you can research for yourself and look at these things and understand how the process works. And even so, once you understand it, you can challenge it. You know, you can be on those panels. They can say you have 3 members of general public, so you can actually be voted on this panel and you can actually voice and speak and talk about these things, you know, and see what can you do to make change in these areas. Because just because the law is written, that, you know, is it really right? You know, can we make changes to it? Can we make adjustments to it to fit everyone? You know what I'm saying? Get justice in the proper due, you know, when it comes to stuff like this. So with all this going on, people are happy that he's convicted, but then we got to look at sentencing. If the man walks out with 4 years or 5 years or 6 years or even 8 years with a chance of parole and to get out early, you know what I'm saying, is people going to be upset, but you got to look at the commission. You got to look at what is the elements, what is being looked at, and how does the trial judge, the district judge, the court of appeals judge, these judges are making these decisions. And again, sometimes it's off of their own whim, but a lot of times it's by a commission that's established something in paper already. So just people need to understand that, take time to look at these things. As far as what's going on right now with more shootings by police, again, I'll just say, look at the facts. Look at what's happening. You know, we think about the Michaela Bryant, you know, the officer could have probably did something different. You know, she was attacking someone else. And you got to understand deadly force, too. People need to understand deadly force. And when it's a threat for someone else, if you threaten someone's life with a deadly weapon, and as a police officer, you got to look at the split second decision, just like with the young Hispanic male, 13-year-old, I can't remember his name right now. Split second decisions, you know, operating on something so quick that you may pull your gun and shoot. Not saying it's an excuse, because definitely not an excuse. But in the day, you got to look at both sides. I want people to start really looking at the things in both sides. People look at it as emotion, and they think, they automatically think the cop just came out and blasted someone. But then you got to look at everything. Just like with the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd case, everything was analyzed. Everything was looked at. You know what I'm saying? Every angle, from the EMS to the medical examiner to the chief of police to you have people that's consulting in deadly force and tactics, defensive tactics. You're looking at police policy procedures. You're looking at police admin. You're looking at recruit training. I can go on and on all types of angles that we looked at to analyze the facts of, yes, at the end of the day, Derek Chauvin was guilty, because everything was analyzed. They looked at the medical history of George Floyd. They looked at how it could have been prevented, how it could have contributed. Everything was reviewed. So when we analyze these caseworks and we looking at, you see the first few moments of someone getting shot down by a police officer, I challenge people just take a step your feelings and just look at everything. And then you can determine whether it was justified or unjustified. And you know what I'm saying? A lot of times the facts don't come out until later. That means people had a chance to get hands on with the investigation and have state law enforcement look into it. That's usually the protocol, especially with a local municipal law enforcement or a metropolitan law enforcement agency. You're going to have a state, entity come in to review the case. You're going to have maybe federal pop in, especially with these cases keep popping up. You're constantly seeing more and more and more of these cases of law enforcement getting into deadly force altercations where guns are drawn and somebody's killed and shot down. It's going to continue to escalate to the point where we got the George Floyd police reform bill. We got stuff going up in Congress that hopefully are being passed to help with maybe not so much defunding, but also monitoring. And again, I talk about training and policy. This is what the policy part comes into play, where we sit back and we analyze and look at what can we do as a law enforcement agency? What can we do to make our training better, make our policy better? You know what I'm saying? To where we can maybe clean up these accidents, when police shootings. So in a sense, I challenge people to just look at these things. I'm not going to be before you very long. I just want to touch on the sentencing aspect, because we know we're waiting for sentencing for Derek Chauvin. It was interesting. I pulled this up, and you take time to really read and look at each state, because every state is different. What you do in Minnesota may not work in Arkansas. It may not work in Alaska. It may not work in D.C. or Georgia or Florida or Tennessee or Texas. It may not work. Every state has its own difference of dealing with sentencing. So it's good to people to actually look at these panels and look at how they do it and what's in place, and look at the statistics over the years. Because again, it's like everything else. You got to do research and report what you see from the previous data that's been before. So as a researcher, you got to be able to look at it. So kind of want to jump on here and say that real quick. Continue to monitor what's going on. Continue to pray for the families that are experiencing the grief and the loss of their loved ones due to these situations. And it's always two sides to a story. I know people don't want to hear that. I know people don't want to understand that. But if you can look at things more from an objective base instead of dealing with feelings and subjectiveness, then you can probably get an understanding of what's going on, and then find a way to, in your own town, in your own communities, in your own tip of the spear is what I call it, have an influence on, how can we prevent these shootings? How can we de-escalate? How can we go to our leadership, our Congress, our senators, our community leaders? How can we stand together more to continue to push the envelope on making this zero tolerance on law enforcement, reacting to their deadly force continuum versus de-escalating? And again, just even saying that, we also got to look at too, and people don't understand this, is that law enforcement officers wear the badge. I said this before. It's a different side of the house when you're walking in the badge, because then again, there's police officers that are getting shredded by these people they pull over, because they are trying to be careful in the sense of how they respond to who they pull over. And sometimes if you're too careful, people know, and you end up losing your life. You know what I'm saying? So it's always two sides of the coin. And I keep telling people that, and people don't want to hear it. They focus on the one side. They focus on, being on the side where it's the person. In that case, yes. And I'm not taking away from that. But then when people really look at the other side, when you're wearing the badge and you're the one walking up to the car to try to do your job, and then someone pulls out a high power rifle and shreds you up and kill you, then for some people that's good riddance. But then some people thinking, they got a life too, they got a family too, they got kids too. So we got to both look at both sides and try to be a little bit more, I wouldn't say empathetic or sympathetic to both sides, but I know a lot of people are not going to do that because of what's constantly being shown in the media. So it takes a little bit more, a little bit more heart to really look at it from a different perspective, and I challenge people to do that. I challenge people to sit back and really look at when these trials come, when there's investigations and stuff, do your research, dig in, look at previous cases, study the process of how the criminal justice system works, because you can't fix something you don't know. You can't, if you don't study it, if you don't look at it, you're not going to be able to fix it. So that's all I got. I just want to throw that on here. Hope y'all check out the Freedom Fighters channel, getting something out of that. And as we continue to monitor these different events, I will be able to keep up and post and put stuff out. But right now, I just kind of want to share that. And I hope all is well. And y'all be blessed and continue to share and push to share the videos and subscribe and like. Thank you. Have a good day.